Better late than never, right? Welcome to an episode 8 of Last of Us Reaction and Review. Only a few days late. Of course, AEW Revolution was on Sunday, and I wasn't able to watch the show live, let alone review it live. So we're here, um, but we're here finally to do this now. So good. Uh, I'm not exactly sure when a review of the season finale will happen. Sunday is my wife's birthday, so I'll be hanging out with her. She really wants to watch the Oscars. It is odd to me. I will just say this. It is odd to me. You might be meeting my daughter here, actually. She wants a hug. My daughter wants a hug. My it's odd to me that they preempted the. Is it really that? Are they switching it for next week? Thank God. I hope so because it would be weird that they preempted it. Um, uh, uh, for the Super Bowl, but not for the Oscars. So hopefully it is next week. That'd be nice. Um, um, yeah. So I do hope it is. I do hope it is next week. Um, yeah, my daughter might be coming down if she wants to. She wants a hug. It's her thing now. She does the hug goodnight with daddy before she goes to bed, but then she wants a hug 20 minutes later. So all right, March 13th. March 13th. That's this week. So I guess it is. I guess it is this week. So if the I promise you guys, the latest I will review episode 9, the season finale, um, is is Monday. If the episode is this Sunday, the latest I will review it is Monday during the day. That's Monday, huh? So it's gonna wait. It's going to air on Monday. All right. Well, I guess there's no raw review. I don't know, man. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. We'll figure it out. I'll keep you all abreast of it. It's the 12th. Okay. So it's the 12th. It is 12th. Okay. You know what? I'll figure it out. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about episode 8. Um uh Episode 8 is the David episode. It's the winter episode. It's the one we thought it was going to be. Um it's it was really a very good um hold on. Okay, hold on a second. I guess got to get back to my wife about my daughter. Um, so uh, the episode is uh, uh, pretty faithful to the game. Um, uh, Except for one moment at the end. And I don't know that it's good or bad. I just know that it's different, and I know what changes, and I don't know yet whether or not that small change is it that small. Honestly, I don't know how it affects the rest of the show. So we'll see that then, I guess. Um, Yeah, I'll post a time on my Twitter at Alex Sourgraps. Thank you, Cinnabay, for helping me out. I'll post a time on that once I figure out what time the thing is. It's Joel obviously still not faring too well after the makeshift stitches given to him um, by Ellie. He needs some anti-infection medication pretty quick. Um, and um, she goes out hunting with the rifle. In the game, it's the bow. I kind of like that it's the bow in the game, but they have never actually introduced the bow at all in the movie, which I guess you don't need the bow because you're not doing as much stealthing in the game. I mean, in the movie as you are in the game. It really helps the stealthing. I'll tell you that much in the game. So she's hunting with the rifle. She's a bad shot. Misses the bunny, and hits the buck on the first shot, and is able to then try and track it. But this is where we meet. This is where she meets David and James for the first time. James being played by Troy Baker, who was Joel in the video game. And David being played by Scott Shepherd, an actor with whom I'm not very familiar at all. But I really appreciated his performance in this. They have changed David from the game. As far as I can tell, David was not a preacher in the game. They have laid on some very thick symbolism with David as the silver-tongued preacher who is actually an agent of the devil. It's some really good 19th century American novelization stuff. I mean, that's a lot of that was in there. But he's making the preacher, the man of God, into a child raping cannibal. That's some serious symbolism there. We have not really seen what the faithful are doing in this. Not the faithful. Are religious. What religious people, how they're doing in this time within this situation. It's not they have not played with that yet. I don't think they play with that really at all in the game, and so like this is the end of times. If you were a very devout Christian who believed in like the book of Revelations and the rapture and shit, like what does that say to you if you are here in a world that has basically ended and you have not been spirited away to live in the clouds with God and his little boy? It is very interesting that they are now touching on that here. This flock now dealing with. I like that they're dealing with specific people. That see, Joel doesn't kill 175 guys on his way to taking Ellie to Salt Lake City in the show. He kills like a few, but every one of them has a name and a role in their own community. They have friends, loved ones, family members. That is not the case at all in the game. So in the game, when they're visiting the University of Eastern Colorado, they are attacked, like straight up attacked by raiders there, and Joel has to fight his way out of the university by killing lots of people. So in the game, when David is like, I sent some of my men to the local college to scout for food, and all of them are dead, except for a couple of them, who came back and said they were all killed by a crazy man who was traveling with a little girl. In the show, it's very specific. One guy got killed. Now, we know, because we watched the shit happen, that he tried to kill Joel first. And Joel ended up killing him instead. But that guy has a name. His name is Alec. And Alec has a wife and a daughter, the daughter about Ellie's age. And for that community, they believe that he was murdered by a crazy man. Alec was. Not just a bunch of guys who are part of this group. Alec, father of Hannah, wife to Joyce, like that guy that we all see at church every week. He's dead now because a crazy man killed him. It's a very, very specific thing that is not just nebulous out in the open. So I like that they made it that. I enjoyed the backstory they gave David because it fleshed out more of his evilness. Because the man used to be a teacher who taught math to kids about your age, he says to Ellie. So this is a man who is who's a pedophile, who enjoys raping young teenagers. That's the thing he wants to do. He wanted to do that with Hannah. He was definitely setting that shit up before he met Ellie. And now he wants to do it with Ellie. And that guy, now, 20 years ago, was teaching kids that age. Now, the way he describes it later in the episode is that the end of the world allowed his violent nature to shine through. So it's possible that if a fungus hadn't ended the world, that he wouldn't have raped any 14-year-olds in the real world, you know? He wouldn't have actually gone through with it. But he did have those urges. So it is important, like, they are setting this guy up as being incredibly trustworthy. A former teacher, you say? A preacher? Well, how could this be a bad man? Of course, by the end of the episode, we know he's the worst man. They're also cannibalizing their dead. Now, I don't know if they're... This is the thing that's so odd. In the game, cannibalism has already been... it's already been... the subject has been broached already in the game. Like, the first hunters you run into in Pittsburgh, it is directly implied that when they kill the people they kill and steal all the stuff from them, they also cut them up and eat them. It's just a matter of survival. It's something everybody does. So it's not necessarily that shocking when you find out later in the game that David is also cutting up people and eating them as well. I appreciate that this is the first time we've seen anything about cannibalism in the game. Is this in the show is now, because it makes it more shocking. I don't know how quickly in the episode I would have caught on had I not known. I think a lot of people are who've already played the game are saying, "Oh, I would have known immediately." I don't know. Like, they did a very good job of talking about, like, how much food do we have left. Counting all the venison, counting all the, everything we have, rationing it for everybody, maybe a few days. So they do have venison on hand. They have venison, right? So they're going to go out and shoot a deer. They want a deer. They want to eat the deer. They are out of deer. So they will eat human instead. They have no compunction doing it, but it is not a thing that, like, we are cannibals now. We prefer eating humans. Any human we see who's not part of our group, we will eat them because we just likes the taste. No, they are a group that needs to survive, and they'll eat human meat because, of course, they will. At least David knows about it. Timothy knows about it, and I believe James knows about it. Timothy is the guy who gets murdered by Joel, the first guy who gets murdered by Joel. He's also the guy who brings in to the cooking staff a big tub full of cubed red meat, and they ask him, what is it? And he says, venison. He pauses a little bit before he says venison, but he says venison. And there's no reason to believe that's not the last of the venison. There's no reason to believe it isn't. Now, here's the other thing, Scuda. Scuda says, David did, however, eat an enormous portion of stew when it was served. Well, yes, because he's the king. And the king always eats a double helping. Now, I believe that David might love eating meat. Cannibalism. He might love it. But I don't think James loves it. I think it's a thing he knows he has to do because he wants to survive. I think that, but they wanted the deer first. They wanted to eat the deer. The deer would be much better, much more, yeah, let's eat the deer first. But when somebody dies in their group, they don't bury them. They eat them. They recycle them. So, yeah, but I noticed that too. When they were serving the stew to everybody, David got a big old huge helping because he's the king, and the king eats more than everybody else. We have to keep his strength up so he can be our leader. Standard cult behavior. Ellie leading them away from Joel, who's still too sick, but I love that she says, listen, take this knife. Anybody comes down here, you kill him. That's different from the game, I believe. Joel wakes up and Ellie's not around and he doesn't know where she is, so he goes and finds guys out on the street, brings them in and does the same exact scene where he like says to one of them, show me where we are on the map and show me where Ellie is. And it better be the same spot your buddy points to. And then he kills that guy, and the other guy says, I'm not going to tell you anything now you killed him. That's okay, I believe him. And he kills the second guy. Joel, again, this is something I'm going to say a lot, and there's no compunction. Zero compunction. He is compunctionless about killing a couple of guys to get to Ellie. So this is the part where the game diverges. The game and the story diverge, because then Joel, you're now playing as Joel, jumping back and forth with playing as Ellie. Joel now has to fight his way past all of these guys with guns to get, during a real fucking blizzard, to get to the center of this resort town where there's a big steakhouse. That's where Ellie is. He's got to fight through all these people to do it. There's an alarm going off. The blizzard provides some shelter. You can sneak around pretty well in the game without, if you know where to go, without actually anybody seeing you. But there's a bunch of people around with guns looking for you and looking for her. So that part's not there at all. He never has to come across anybody but those two first guys he kills. Well, he kills one in the basement, and then he kills the other two guys when they're tied up in that room. But he doesn't have to kill anybody else to get to Ellie. Everything that Ellie does when she's in the cell, in the kitchen, talking to David, when David tells her all the stuff, the addition of like David's personal theology, not being a Christian theology at all, but he worships cordyceps. Because cordyceps is God. Cordyceps, how could it not be God? It has set in motion all of these things. It has provided me with my flock, with my standing in this community. Cordyceps has tapped me on the shoulder to be a leader to these people so that I can be a king amongst them. He's lost his fucking nut. You understand? So, but that's a different thing than the game entirely. As I said, he's not at all religious in the game, as far as I can tell. It breaks his finger. Ellie does, after he seduces her with like, you could rule at my side as my queen. She's 14, dude. I actually saw somebody when they were first complaining about Bella Ramsey being Ellie, that she's not hot enough to be Ellie, and somebody was like, "Dude, the character's 14. Sorry you can't crank one out to a 14-year-old on an HBO show." And the guy's like, "It's not about me. It's not like whether or not I want to have sex with her. We have to believe David wants to have sex with her." Because if the 14-year-old girl isn't attractive enough, the child rapist might not want to rape her. And that's the leap you're not willing to make with this show set in 2023, current day, where fungus zombies have taken over the world. The leap you're not willing to make is that Bella Ramsey isn't hot enough as a 14-year-old for the child rapist to want to rape her. People are insane. That's all I'll say about that. The thing that was the biggest divergence, I think, from the original is that Ellie plays a little game of cat and mouse with David in the burning steakhouse. He's got a cleaver. She's got a steak knife, which is handy in a steakhouse. And she's able to get the drop on him and stab him once in the side, but he knocks her down pretty forcefully, and she's dazed. And he climbs on top of her, and he's straight up going to rape this 14-year-old forcibly. I guess there's no way to rape somebody unforcibly. I suppose if she was unconscious, it wouldn't be that forcibly. But let's not get into semantics about rape. Let's not do that. He's about to rape this 14-year-old in a steakhouse that's on fire. Not like drag her out of the burning steak horse somewhere else to rape her. I'm raping you right now. That's not a nice thing to do. Don't do that. Let's not do that. So she gets the drop on him again, gets the cleaver. In the game, I believe it's a machete, and she just wails on his head for an uncomfortably long amount of time. And then in the show, she finishes doing that, staggers out of the steakhouse. The steakhouse is the center of this community, though, is the thing here. And I do think it is odd that nobody is running to... She already killed James. I guess several of the dudes have been murdered by Joel, but there's more people. We saw a lot of people who were in that place the night before eating stew. And nobody has come to try and put out the fire. Like, nobody lives close enough to the thing that you would see smoke billowing out of your church/cafeteria and want to check on that. That's the only thing about this. I'm like, in the game, most people are dead in the town. And there's a huge blizzard going on, so most people are either dead or batten down the hatches in their own house. So perhaps it's a little different. But anyway, she staggers out of this burning steakhouse, takes a few steps, and there's Joel. Joel, having found her pack, where he found the dead horse. By the way, R.I.P. horse. It's never nice to shoot a horse. And then he finds, some headless bodies hanging from the rafters in cold storage. And she... And he sneaks up behind her, but probably not nothing to do, and she flips out a little bit. But he says, "Baby girl, it's me. Of course, baby girl is the name that he had for his daughter, so this is the moment where unconsciously, subconsciously, he is recognizing her as his surrogate daughter for the first time. It's the perfect time to do this, because at the end of the next episode, spoiler alert, it's his affection for Ellie, and not being willing to lose another daughter that causes him to make decisions that he does in episode 9. With no more spoiler alerts than that. I will say this. I prefer it. I don't know. In the game, he pulls her off of David. In the game, he gets to the steakhouse and she is currently, when he gets there, wailing on his now cratered head with the meat cleaver or machete in the game, and he pulls her off of him and says, "Baby girl, I got you right there." And she looks up at him and they hug and they leave then, right? In the game. And in the show, he finds her outside of the thing. I believe she says in both the game and the show, he was going to. He tried to. And she doesn't finish. But Joel knows what she means. And says, "Baby girl, it's okay, I got you, I know." And they hug, right? There is I believe, a very different... There's a very different event pulling her off, like seeing her murdering a man with a machete, realizing that the Ellie you know, and she is so traumatized, the only reason she would have reacted that way, would have done that to that man, is if that man was trying to do something absolutely horrible to her. And that you had gotten there in time to get her away from this. To stop her from doing this. Who, in the game, it feels like I don't know how long she would have kept hitting him with that machete. Like, that's how traumatized she was. The fact that Ellie is able to pull herself away from that, leave the building and go outside of her own accord in the show, I don't know if it's better. I do know that it's different. It's very different. It's very different for Joel to not have witnessed that. To not have seen the aftermath of Ellie flipping a switch in her brain where now she is capable of horrific violence. In the game, in Last of Us Part 2, Ellie again feels, and I'm going to say this again, no compunction about murdering lots and lots and lots of people in really, really violent, brutal ways. And I don't think it's possible for the game character to do any of that were she not at 14 years old forced by circumstance to brutally end the life of this man, her would-be rapist and would-be eater of. So Joel, having seen her in that moment of absolute trauma turning into violence, having witnessed that, is very different than only having seen her afterwards. She may be still traumatized, obviously, but it's not the same thing. And I don't know whether or not it's good or bad. We'll have to see what goes on. I do know that there is a specific, I think, there is a specific thing, a switch that is flipped in Joel in the game. Having witnessed her at that absolute psychotic break having seen that in the flesh happening in front of him, that then makes his protective nature for her feel all the more impenetrable, paramount to him. He has to keep her safe. Call it a weird fucking guy thing, but I'm never going to let that happen to you ever again. It's the same thing with finding her having been almost raped and having been almost eaten and having had to murder a guy. And once you realize all that, okay, well, I'm never going to let that happen to you again. As opposed to, holy shit, I'm watching you murder a man because he almost raped you. There's a difference. I don't know exactly how big of a difference is, but there's a difference. Especially for Joel. That is an image in his head he'll never be able to get out of. But in the show, that image isn't there. He never saw it. So I don't know. I don't know what happens, how that changes things for Joel. How that changes things for Pedro Pascal, the actor. Because this is the thing, like, when you're an actor, when you're an actor, there's a lot of things that, like, that you use the power of imagined memory. Let's just say it that way. As an actor, use the power of imagined memory, where you say, okay, what are some of the most impactful memories that my character has that I can draw on in certain moments? You know what I mean? Years and years ago, I played Macbeth. And if you don't know the actual real backstory of Macbeth, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth had a child who was born and lived for a few years and then died. And they don't really deal with how or what happened or any of that. But that is said in the text. They had a child, lived for a few years, and is now dead. It's not said how long ago it was or any of that stuff. So the actress who was playing Lady M and I got together and we created a shared imagined memory of the circumstances of our child's death. And the trauma of it for her was that she found him dead in his crib in this imagined memory. And I was 2 weeks away fighting a battle. 2 weeks away by horse. And she had to send a message to me via courier to get to me on the battlefield. And then I had to ride to her. So she, like, had to be there alone, basically, with the child, the dead child. Like, do I bury him? What do I do? Like, my husband's not here, all of this stuff. And the trauma of it for me was knowing that I wasn't there when the kid died, all of that stuff. Now, we could have come up with any memory or whatever, but that was the one we did, and it was very specific. And that imagined memory is a trauma that you're able to draw on in scenes to give them a little extra oomph. And there's an imagined memory for the video game Joel, Troy Baker, that isn't there for the show Joel, Pedro Pascal. I don't know if I was too far into the weeds there with you, with the way that I described my little imagined memory exercise playing Macbeth now 15 years ago. The next episode should be suitably devastating. I'll say that. I don't know what they're gonna do. They skip a lot of the infected stuff in the game. There's a very long chapter in the game of them in the subway tunnels or something. The interstate that runs underneath Salt Lake City. Um, and and they have to go down there and get past all these inflected. There's a couple of bloaters and a bunch of clickers and runners everywhere, all that stuff in the game. And it's not there. I'm sure it's not going to be there in the show because they don't do that kind of stuff. So I don't know what they're going to do to fill out the last thing. You know, I think there's a flashback there of oh gosh, I can't remember her name now, but whoever plays the name of the actress who plays um, Ellie in the games is playing Ellie's mom, I believe, in flashbacks. We haven't seen any of those yet, so I think we're going to see those now in this episode, and then we'll see the end of the end of part one. Craig Mazin apparently has come out and said, "I believe that that we Ashley Johnson, thank you, Corey. That the Craig Mazin has said that he doesn't think you can do The Last of Us Part 2 in one season. Which actually might be a good way of thinking about it. I don't think you could do The Last of Us Part 2 in one season either. The narrative is far too broad. Like, and specific as well. Like, so I would love for there to be 3 seasons of this show. I believe HBO would love there to be 3 seasons of this show too, because 8 million people watched episode 8. They set a new record for the number of people watching the show. Any HBO show, I believe. So that's what they're trying to do over there. I believe they're trying to get as many seasons of this thing as possible. Keep an eye on my Twitter at Alex Sourgraps. I will let you know when there will be a review of episode 9. Like I say, when it happens, if the show airs on Sunday night, then the latest the review will happen is on Monday afternoon. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Until then, in a couple of minutes on this very channel, I'm going to be streaming some Red Dead Redemption 2. So hang out for that. Should be a good episode of that. We'll see all of you the next time. If you're not there to be there for cowboy antics, then I hope you'll come back for the review of episode 9 here. Until then, endure and survive.